So Doug Ford won in Ontario, and that's great news for them because they have been under the oppressive government of the Liberals for years and years. Ontario used to be like one of the richest provinces in the country, and now they're the highest debt country or province in the entire planet. Like, nobody has more debt per capita than people in Ontario. So that is pretty insane. And this is all because of the liberal policies that have been in place for years. And now people are finally starting to wake up. And even though Doug Ford isn't perfect and stuff, and a lot of our politicians in Canada that are right wing tend to still be pretty far left, but he is at least way better than the NDPs who actually had like a decent shot of winning. Like, the media comes out, lies, saying like, oh, they're neck and neck, it's really fucking close. And they're doing the same thing that the media did in America for the polls with Trump and Hillary Clinton, right? They were never really accurate. And they just do this to try to get you to stay home and feel like you have no shot of winning or whatever. So this often backfires on them, but they did it anyways. And but nonetheless, the NDP did get quite a bit of support, which is kind of troubling because they are like communist essentially. So the liberals, the people who used to be liberals, just essentially moved further left. So what this is going to do eventually is this is going to have Trudeau and all these other idiots on the Liberal Party go even further left to try to like get those people back. So it's good that he got into office, and he's going to be doing a few changes right away that hopefully he can do. And it seems like, I agree with the majority of the changes. So the first one is look at the books, because the previous administration said that their deficit was something like 6.7 billion, but there was other audit that was done and the actual numbers were something like 11 billion. So Doug Ford's going to hire somebody or people to go in and look at, how they did this miscalculation. Like, the same thing happened, I'm pretty sure, with the NDP. They had a huge miscalculation of like hundreds of millions of dollars, right? But nonetheless, they're going to look into that, and hopefully it does expose some of their corruption, which it's probably full of, and you can get some of these people, out of politics for good. And the second thing he's going to do, he's going to fire the CEO of Hydro One, who gave him and all these other people huge bonuses and raises and stuff. And, this thing is just kind of, I think, in my opinion, kind of just for the people. It's not really going to do anything. It's not going to really, like, he has another thing where he wants to take the dividends from Hydro and just give it directly to the people to lower their price. So I can see that being a good thing and actually, lowering people's energy bills. But I think that's just kind of like a temporary band-aid, and the whole firing of the staff is kind of just a political move. It would be better, in my opinion, to divide Hydro and these companies into a bunch of other smaller companies, which they should have done initially, or sold it off to different energy companies, so then they don't all have, one company has the whole share of everything. But this is still better than what the NDP what they were proposing, what was to buy it back entirely, which would be stupid. The rates for Hydro when the government owned it completely were skyrocketing, like, compared to all the other provinces and their energy prices. The inflation in Ontario was like I don't know how many times more than everybody else. But as soon as they did sell off half the company, it did lower and get back to normal levels of what other people were paying, right? So, if they just went a step further and sold it off entirely, then I think that would lower the prices even more, right? Because people are getting mad about, oh, the CEO paid himself this, and that. But it's like, when you're in control of companies that are this massive and this huge, you need to pay CEOs a good amount of money to do a good job. Like, that is just the case. People get mad, the CEOs get raises and stuff, but if you hire a shitty CEO for $5 million less, your company could make a hell of a lot less money, like tons less, or maybe it'll go to shit. So you want to invest in a good CEO to make sure that company is running effectively. But people are just dumb, so it's kind of like a witch hunt thing, and he's just doing this to satiate some people on kind of both sides that are mad about this. And then after that, he's going to challenge the carbon tax, which is good. Like, the carbon tax is going to implement something like a 30% tax on companies that produce oil and carbon and all this shit. So who is going to eventually pay for that? It's not going to be the companies. They're going to put that price or put that cost onto the consumer, which is us. And that's just going to increase gas prices for us and increase the price of everything. Whereas we don't need to. Canada is pretty much carbon neutral. Like, we are not the problem in the world in terms of producing carbon. It is more developing nations. And nonetheless, like, we have already reached the point of no return. If the climate scientists are right and all this shit, we've already reached the point of no return. So the only viable option now is to create technologies that suck carbon out of the atmosphere, and that's all we can really do at this point. And I think it is probably overblown, the whole climate change shit. Like, I do believe in climate change. Of course, the climate changes continuously, but it's all about it comes down to how much do humans have an impact. Like, obviously I don't agree with pollution. I don't think we should pollute our oceans and throw plastic in the rivers and shit. Like, no. But in terms of carbon and heat and all this stuff, there's still the science isn't 100% certain about that. And we, if if it is true, like I said, we've already reached the point of no return. So we need to develop technologies to suck the carbon out. And like I said before, we are not the problem when it comes to producing carbon in the world. So putting all these authoritarian measures on us to stop our production of carbon is not going to do anything. It's just going to screw over our industries and our companies, and those companies are just going to go other places to produce that energy, the same amount, that will probably be even dirtier than what we would produce. So, they're just, it's out of sight, out of mind, really. That's what they're doing, as long as it's not in Canada. And then he's going to rewrite the Ontario sex ed curriculum, because the curriculum that was implemented by the Liberals literally was devised by a convicted pedophile. And after he was convicted in like 2015 or something, they still kept the same curriculum up. And it's the curriculum teaching kids about butt sex, about it's like priming them to be little fucking tools for some pedophile. And it's sick, and they kept it up. So he's just going to bring it back to the old curriculum until they come up with a new one or whatever. But the old one is still 100% better than teaching kids what they were fucking teaching kids before. So this right there is probably one of the biggest things, I think, because that was just destructive to children, and it was confusing, and it's just, people are wondering, why are there more trans? It's like, you can literally turn kids into trans when they're younger. You can convince confused kids into, dressing up and doing this and that, and then when they do grow up and start to figure things out on their own a little bit more, they'll probably be really fucked up and resent you a lot more. So, teaching kids what they were teaching before in the curriculum was just insane. They don't need to learn about transsexuals and butt sex and all this shit. That's just over the line. And then he's going to try to end the York University strike. And this strike has been going on for 3 months. And this is the issue when you have the government and education, the government and healthcare, whatever, tied in. Because in Canada, we have these strikes all the time. We have There was a strike. There was one in my city where these teachers were striking for a really long time too. There's nurses who strike all the fucking time. Now these people have striked for 3 fucking months, and the union's just not budging. They're like, oh, we're not getting what we want. So what they're doing is they're giving these kids like just passing grades. They're not, these kids are the ones that are suffering. They're paying for this education as well, even though it is subsidized heavily by the government. They're still putting in some of their money and their time, and you're just wasting it. So when you have a free market system, you notice that their teachers do not strike. And because like they can't hold up the whole system like they can when it's tied into the government like it is now. Because if they're the only ones providing doctors and this and that, then they could just all strike. Whereas if it's a free market, there's a lot of different companies providing nurses, teachers, all these things. So, the ones that, they'll be getting paid more. So they'll be like, why would I strike? I'm getting a great job and a great pay. And maybe another company, they'll strike because their company is fucking them over. But then they could just quit, go somewhere else. There won't even be a need for a strike because they'll just, I'm just going to leave this job and go to the one down the street that pays me better. Whereas the government system, everybody's more or less getting paid similar. There's either the teachers are getting paid way too much, they're getting given way too many privileges, or they're getting paid way too little. And that's the problem when the government is setting rates and setting prices and stuff. They never know what is the correct amount to set. That's why you need to leave it up to the market. So glad Doug Ford won, and hopefully he can implement some of these changes right away, because the carbon tax is just one of the biggest issues right there too. Like that is just one of the stupidest policies for business, for our growth, for just every average Canadian citizen. And that needs to be stopped in all provinces. And Trudeau is coming in and like taking away people's funding and all this shit because they don't support, like Saskatchewan, because they don't support the carbon tax and want to implement it and fuck over their province even more. So, hopefully the next election, this is more proof that there's a red wave in Canada. Because if you look at all of the provinces, almost like none of them are run by Liberals anymore. And our country is run by fucking Liberals. So he's pretty much taking credit for the economic growth, that there's a lot of all the more conservative provinces that are doing better now under conservative government. It's like, oh, look at the growth and job growth. It's because of me. This is my policies. It's like, no, you're making it harder, but we're growing in spite of you. And if the Liberals or the NDP had won in Ontario, their debt would have skyrocketed even more. And it's like, the media and all this stuff, they're talking about Doug Ford. It's like, oh, he doesn't have a price plan. It's like, you guys didn't seem to care about the budget when Ontario is literally the highest debted place in the entire fucking world. Like, you didn't care then, but now you fucking care. So, it's just a lot of fucking bullshit. But that's all I had to say. If you like my content, subscribe and have a good day. See ya.